Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to From Prison to Purpose. My name's Jimmy McGill. I'm the host of the show. I got a special co-host today, my beautiful wife, Chelsea McGill. Hey. Hey. And I am super stoked about today's guest. You probably already know who he is if you watch prison content, if you watch Reentry, if you're anywhere on social media. Then if you haven't heard of Ian Bick, you've been living under a rock. We call him Big Bick Energy. What's up, Ian Bick?
What an intro, Jimmy.
Did you like it?
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Why do y'all call him
It
this?
was the first time I ever saw Ian Bick. I saw merch that he was giving away as he just started his podcast that said Big Bick Energy.
Which didn't sell, which is why I gave it away. I was, I've made a lot of, it's been a different road, a long journey. But it was interesting. I was really thought that Big Dick Energy was it.
It's
was
catchy.
catchy. That was the name of the podcast, everything. But in reality, I don't know.
Name of the podcast?
That was the name of the podcast. Yeah,
Oh.
Big Bick Energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be it. And then it
Branded.
rebranded, gave all that merch I gave away. And back then I didn't have any connections to have someone do it on consignment or anything. So I spent when Facebook was paying money. I made like $8,000 on Facebook, already 30 grand maxed out on my credit cards. I spent that $8,000 on the merch, which I ended up giving away, but it helped me build core audience because where could someone, get free merch like that from a creator? They just had to pay for shipping.
Huh.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. I was sitting there packaging. I spent like a week sending out like 200-300 orders to people that have that. And that's like the OG legacy merch.
So how long was it called Big Bick Energy until you changed it? Was that like a quick process?
It was never called that. It was going to be called
was an
that.
idea.
I never launched. It was an idea. My actual company LLC is BBE Entertainment. So that's Big Bick Energy Entertainment. So it's still a part of that. So that's why I got merch. I like the merch. I think it's cool. Big Bick Energy. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's definitely custom branded.
It's one of the things we think that are gonna be like, this is it, and it's like,
I just hate merch. It's so hard, and you're like, everyone has merch, so you have to think like outside the box.
I thought I was going to be Scarface on a mountain of snow, and I ended up being a homeless drug addict.
Turned podcast and recovery house owner.
So I get it. We think once
your
they're
beard's looking good.
looking like Papa Smurf.
We were just talking about that in the car.
Yeah.
Santa Claus.
You're rocking the white.
Santa Daddy.
Ian and I want to go see the new Santa movie tomorrow. We want to go see Red One.
Yeah.
You gonna be here for a little while tomorrow?
Tomorrow I have off, so we're gonna see the movie tomorrow. I'm gonna chill during the day. We'll see the movie if you want to come. We can have a family outing. You bring your son.
I thought I have a podcast.
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
It's tomorrow night. Ian's got his times off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This is tomorrow night. We're talking about, right?
Ian has a down day.
So who am I gonna drink Celsius with?
White Joyce. Are you interviewing him tomorrow?
Ty's got him on the schedule for sure.
Ty doesn't miss a beat with that schedule.
Ty. Yeah, don't play.
Mm-hmm.
Do not play with him. He is tediously organized, and I am unorganized. So it's like chaos, and
Yeah.
you're just staring.
I think you changed the dates and times on this whole trip. I was supposed to come in last night late. I booked it. I confirmed with him like 4 times. I said, this is when I'm coming in. Great. I asked him a week ago or 2 weeks ago, Jimmy, what days are the prison visits so I can try to line up some interviews for me?
Ty knew the prison date.
Monday. He says Monday. I'm like, Jimmy, I don't get in till that day.
Right.
I get in Monday night. He's like, that's all I could do. I was like, well, when were you going to tell me that? So I had to move my flight.
Good luck.
Luckily, I canceled. It worked out better, though, because I was going to fly from Texas back to Connecticut, then hop on a plane back out here. So I saved some money with all the baggage
Nice.
because I have all this gear with me.
Okay, so I want to hear about, so how did it end up getting to Locked In? Like, are we going to go straight into that?
I think there's way more before that, Chelsea.
Okay. I meant the name wise, because we were talking about
Okay. So one of my
BE, and so you were like, this name is not going to work.
So me and these old partners I had that helped kind of start the podcast, were sitting around with like a list of names, and like Locked In is a common catchphrase, and I added on like the with Ian Bick part. So it was like a joint effort. But I wanted something where it was like with Ian Bick because I saw other shows, other big podcasts have that. but also something that wasn't like too exclusive, like Locked In kind of fits, and it's not like owned by anyone. Like if you search Locked In podcast, there's a bunch out there. But the Withy and Bick part makes it like you can't take that. No, there can never be another Locked In Withy and Bick podcast, you know? So it worked out, and it's a play on like you're literally locked in prison. It's universal, you know? Yeah. And I'm glad we didn't make like the branding like really prison-y. Like we had like lines in it, but it wasn't just, it was like universal. It wasn't like just too prison-y, you know? Even now the logos aren't necessarily like that.
Ian actually helped with this design. Yeah, he did. And I trademarked From Prison to Purpose, right? Like in case I ever need to send some cease and assist letters out there. So
yeah, see, like that's a name you would trademark and stuff because that's a universal like type name that someone else can essentially take. Locked In, I don't even think you could trademark that because that's such a common thing. But the Locked In with Ian Bick, I don't care if someone else wants to go try to replicate that. Good luck, you know, you can't do it.
Yeah, and then too, it's the title of my book. It's on my merch. It's my tagline. It's all that stuff. So I need it From Prison to Purpose.
Yeah. I see that's not the new logo, though, on that little emblem right there.
I think you had a part in that, too, didn't you?
I think I picked that one right there, right?
Yeah, well, you told us where to put the handcuffs, the Jimmy McGill.
I'm a designer.
Yeah. Graphics.
Yeah. Have you always been good at that stuff?
I like, because I grew up in, like, the catering business with my dad. I've always been, like, a peacemaker. Like, I look at everything like a chessboard. So like when I come up with an idea, I have to execute everything like fully, and everything has to have its place, and you're like designing a room. So like when I have an idea to build a set or anything, like it's all put together and ready to go at once.
Well, I immediately want to ask you when your birthday is and what your sign is.
I'm a Gemini.
Okay.
Yeah.
So June?
And then May 31st,
you're pretty. Okay. I'm a Cancer, so I'm right.
My mom is
July. Oh, yeah. Okay. Cancers are awesome. They say Geminis are crazy though.
Yeah, I think I 100% fit the personality of a Gemini, like risk taker.
And it's like the two sides or whatever.
Yeah.
Virgos are the best.
Yeah, we were in a room full of Virgos.
Every woman like always like their eyes raised when you say you're a Gemini, you know.
Oh yeah, and for women too. Like that's the label that you're crazy.
Yeah.
Cancers are like emotional. And then yeah. And Virgos, we were talking about them last night and them being real organized and stuff. That's why I was asking you if that was anywhere close to you. So you grew up doing catering with your dad?
So my dad's a New York City public schools teacher who retired, did catering full time. He was like a principal educator.
What did he teach?
Smart. I think he did like biology, he did math. It was kind of universal. He got into teaching to escape the war because he was born in 1945. He's older.
Is he still with us?
Yeah, he's turned 79 next month. That man's like my best friend. He's the goat. I have him in skits. I have him, and he's cool. Everyone loves him. He's been on the podcast a couple times. He was like my second guest. Just a really cool dude, and he's been there for me through everything. And so he did that. That's where I got the entrepreneurial risk taker part. And it is cool that I also, in a way, got the not go to college part from him, but he still went to college and got educated, and he played basketball in college, and then he went and
basketball is my jam.
Yeah, and then he went and did catering, and he got pretty famous in the catering world. Like we grew up, I went to the Harry Potter premiere for the Goblet of Fire, got to meet the cast. He's done stuff.
You have a funny Harry Potter story.
Yeah, 50 Cent, all of these cool parties. Bill Clinton. He catered for back in the day, like all of these insane stories. So I grew up in that lifestyle, and I started working for him at a very young age. I grew up in Danbury, Connecticut, a little gated Jewish community called Lake Wabika. That our house is on a lake, and that was like childhood. And I grew up working with him, and I was always like a front of the house type of person. I loved being on wait staff and organizing the room. The first party I ran for him was in 8th grade, and it was a party of like 400 people, and I was in charge of that.
Was there anybody there that was famous or whatever that you were, or was that just like a regular, what was that party? Do you remember?
It was just a regular party in town for the film festival.
Okay.
Yeah, actually Joey Pantaloni's was there from, what's it called? The Sopranos.
Okay.
He was at that film festival. But yeah, I was just like, I had the skill of event planning, and that translated into what I would do later in life, and what technically I still do now, because podcasting is in a way event planning.
Which is, we've told Jimmy throughout the years that he's really good at that. So now y'all are both doing podcasts.
Yeah. Welcome to From Prison to Purpose with Chelsea McGill.
Well, it's not that. It was like I was telling you last night. I mean, I'm used to women talk 90 to nothing. They get in there, and then you're like figuring out the 15 conversations at the same time.
Did you know that about women?
What?
That they talk 90 to nothing.
I try not to pay attention.
Clearly.
I'm kidding.
So like y'all's conversations go, okay, a guy says something, and like basically we're waiting 15 minutes for y'all to finish. And then if we jump in there, like a man will think we're interrupting. And so then it's like, but we have to sit there and wait for the guy to
mansplain.
Yeah. It's Jimmy's learning all of this stuff. And so like at my house, Carter and Jimmy will think,
because I'm in training for domestication.
That's good, Jimmy. You could use that in life.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a time when I was barbarianish. That's a word too. It's FYI.
We were called that on our kickball.
Yeah, the barbarians.
All right, so why don't we get back into today's episode with the McGills?
So you grow up in Danbury, Connecticut, right? Normal upbringing, good family, came from money, gated community, little Jewish kid. And you end up, how did you end up becoming a teen nightclub owner? What's the story behind that? Like, I've heard you mention it, but I've never heard you actually talk about how you actually came to own a teenage nightclub.
Well, I was running a street gang called the Teeny Boppers, Sesame Street Posse. So, me and my friend had gotten into trouble in our neighborhood. We did some vandalism against. They had a president and vice president of our community that were kind of picking on us. We got in trouble. We got caught, sentenced to community service. I ended up starting this charity, Fight for the Homeless, where we sold those Live Strong type bracelets that fight for the homeless on it. Raised a bunch of money, fulfilled my community service hours. The money went to the local homeless shelter. And then I wanted to take it a step further because I was very passionate about the cause. And I convinced my school principal to let me do a dance at the high school that wasn't on the calendar year. So it took some convincing, because you have your proms, you have your snowball, which is like the winter dance, and homecoming. This was going to be in between, because there's a dry period between your snowball in January and then the proms in the springtime in May. And also junior or freshman, sophomore don't have a prom. So I wanted another dance to kind of fill that void. So he says, yes, I do this dance. It's very successful, sells a couple hundred tickets. I organize the whole thing. I promote it. I print flyers. I put a banner up. I sell the tickets. I do everything. And that night, actually at the dance, the owner, a multi-million-dollar owner of the corporate center, offers me a job when I turned 16, because I was 15 at the time, turning 16 that year, because he was so impressed with my ability to put this together. And these are skills I just learned from my dad over time, watching him and learning. And so I do this dance, and people pay $20 to get in, raised a couple $1,000s. And I realized that night that, there could be a business here. Yeah. And the thing about school dances is you have to play the censored music. You have the teachers there making sure the kids don't grind on each other or hooking up. You can't come drunk. There's all these, rules. So I said to myself, well, what if there was a space where kids could go to this and not have those rules?
Grind on each other.
Yeah, well, that's what kids want to do. And a party like the house parties, because another thing I was doing, and I was kind of building popularity, was I was in musical theater. So I did the cast party at my parents' house on the lake. Every year we would rent a big tent. I have some questions about,
were you the person that goes to the dances? So you're obviously in plays. Like, okay, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so I never did sports. I was in musical theater, and I did these cast parties every year after the play in May. And so I built up a reputation of popularity with the upperclassmen, because it was all mixed, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. So by the end of my freshman year, going to sophomore year, I was pretty well known for that. And now you add this dance into the mix. Uh-huh. I was a kid that wore a suit and tie to school, carrying around a briefcase, because I figured I was like the CEO of this, little company I started. And, at that point, I kind of decided I'm not going to go to college. So I was super focused on just building this business, an entertainment business. And I'm also throwing house parties at my house because I was never an addict in the sense where, drugs or alcohol. I dabbled in alcohol, you smoke weed, like I'll smoke weed now, but I never had an addiction issue with that. If anything, I had a gambling addiction because I like to take risks, but that was something that's more controllable. I don't gamble now, but that is something that's more,
You're
controllable.
not a person in recovery.
Not to that sense, no.
Well, you're not an addict.
Yeah, I'd say not. I'd say I'm more conscious and I share similar values, like with the gambling aspect.
Yeah.
But I also know it's kind of like part of the economy, and I mean, like I promote, gambling on my podcast. I promote weed, which is in a sense not okay in the recovery world, but I also respect the recovery world and see like there's a lot of cross because I have a lot of people in recovery on the show.
Yeah, no, I get it. And your story is not one of addiction and recovery. Your story is a successful reentry after incarceration.
Yeah, I think it's reentry and redemption is really my story, which is where like I don't follow the line of the reform aspect. Like for when I first got into the space, I was always kind of turned off by the reform aspect because I thought the reform is kind of boring, preaching about reform. Yeah. So when I created this whole business I have now, it's more about reentry, and I think the reentry aspect is sexy because that's the comeback story that everyone loves,
That's
reentry.
right.
And that's what a big piece of where Jimmy fits into this of what he taught me. Like, you're not reform, you're reentry. And we know a lot of people in the reform space, and that's great that they do that, but that's not for me,
So what are y'all, when y'all are throwing out, define reform compared to reentry for people that don't know what that is?
I mean, to me, reform is like the people that want to change, that need, I guess in the broader scope of this is they need Congress approval or government approval to kind of make these changes. Whereas in reentry, you could be the change and you can advocate for stuff and you can make immediate changes without needing anyone. And I think if you fix the reentry part where you have, like in federal prison, a lot of people are returning on violations that are incarcerated. I think you eliminate half of the prison population just by focusing hard on reentry. You don't need to go through all these loopholes of the drugs and all that. And you also inspire people not to sell drugs in the beginning. So you have all of these things about like the reform aspect is, okay, we need better things in prison. We need this, we need that. And then there's the argument of, okay, well, those people deserve to be there because they did this or this and that. It's prison. But reentry, it's they already did their time. They're coming out. Let's set them up for success and let's get them rolling. So when we go into prisons, that's what my story is about. It's about that reentry thing. And I think that aligns more with the recovery world because that in a way is reentry too.
Yeah. So same, man, like my heart, passion, bread and butter is all about the reentry, right? Like the recovery, that's my personal story, right? Like I stay clean so I don't go back to prison. But reentry, that's it. You know what I mean? Like, and for me, it's everything. Right? Like if we can truly reduce recidivism rates, like we put them all out of business and they don't, we need better reentry services. We need better everything.
Yeah. I mean, like I could sit here and say, hey, we should change the drug sentencing guidelines, but that's something I have a direct effect on. I mean, celebrities do that all the time and it doesn't necessarily move the needle. You're a small fish in a big pond, and there's people in our field and Jimmy and I's space that do that and preach about that all day. And that's what they want to do with their life. But for me, that's not me. I'm someone that needs to seek immediate change. And I think like me and Jimmy went into a prison yesterday and we told our story. I think we had more of an everlasting impact on those people in that facility than any, type of reform that you see on the news where it's a pipe dream. Oh, like when, perfect example, when Trump signed that law, the CARES Act, into law, I was in prison at the time when he did that, but that didn't help me at that time. That was going to happen years down the road. What could have helped me was someone like myself, an older version of myself coming into that prison saying, here's what I did after prison. This is what you could do the second you leave 4 months from now.
Housing. It sounds like it's what you're saying.
Not housing.
Yeah, he was
that kind of housing. I'm saying, no, I know I use housing, not recovery housing, but different methods of doing time?
No, getting out early. It encouraged people. Okay. It gave incentive to program. Whereas when I was at prison, there was no incentive to program. It opened up the door to longer halfway house times. It did so many different things.
Okay.
So that was kind of the sense of it. So, going back to high school, my issue was not an addiction to alcohol or, drugs, but it was to being liked. And I wanted to be popular because I was bullied as a kid. And so I always did everything to please people.
As a younger child, you were bullied.
Yeah, as a younger child. I mean, even technically in high school. And even, now I guess people bully me on the internet because I'm just like a misfit, like I'm a little different. I'm McLovin, my face doesn't match my body, like a lot of people that come into the studio and stuff, they don't realize like I'm tall. And I'm built.
One of the first things I thought, I was like, he's tall, which Jimmy had already told me that you were tall, but.
Yeah, people are surprised by I'm built, I'm tattooed and.
Yeah, they think you're like this little dweeb. And I'm like, no, you got Ian kind of messed up. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm 5'11", he's taller than me. And they're like, what? And I'm like, and he's pretty buff and he's inked up. And they're like, what? Because they don't see that. They literally think you're a little bookworm gone bad.
Yeah, I'm always sitting down. So they don't do that.
Put all that stuff together without even, because I've known most of my time with you is FaceTime.
Yeah, and even like on camera, it's like it's only just like you'll see this part tattooed, which is like, okay, they figure I just have my upper arms. Yeah. But then when you see my whole sleeves done and I have like tattoos on my chest and my back and my legs, that throws people off. So yeah, I was picked on, and that was kind of, I think a lot of my issues, or most of my issues, were always like, came from wanting to be liked. Like I was a kid that was always a designated driver because I barely drink. So I'd pick everyone up, spend a couple $100 at Wendy's, taking everyone out to eat. I always paid for meals. I always had money. And that wasn't because of my parents.
Oh, okay.
It was all because of, we were, decent. We went to private school and elementary school and Montessori school, which definitely, encouraged independent thinking. But I was always taught to work hard for your money. When I wanted the new Xbox or the new Wii or PlayStation, I set up at a lemonade stand, or I hustled candy in middle school. So my dad would give me $20 for lunch money for the week, and I would buy candy and energy drinks and whatnot and gum, and I would flip that into $100 or $200 throughout the week. I always had a job, either working for my dad or then the corporate center. So I always had money. I always knew hard work
wasn't your problem.
Yeah, like a lot of people misunderstand me in that sense. Like I've always had a work ethic throughout everything. Like I've always been a hard worker.
Misunderstand you.
Yeah, I did. People definitely miss
Just have it handed to you.
I think it was handed to me. Like everything I have now was not handed to me. I built that on my own. You
worked your butt off for
my dad gave me a lot of money throughout the club thing just to keep it going and stuff. But everything I have now, like no one bought me anything. I built that on my own.
So you're a 17-year-old club owner, and that started because you planned a high school dance to raise money.
What ends up happening is that I do that dance. I'm doing these house parties. My parents say you got to stop doing the house parties because like 300 or 400 kids were showing up at the house every weekend.
Are you an only child?
No, I have a brother. He's nothing really like me. He's 4 years younger. And then I stumble across this club called Tuxedo Junction, which was a historic rock club in Danbury, Connecticut. Had bands like Oasis, Joan Jett, Twisted Sisters, a bunch of people that played there, but it had kind of gone downhill, gotten a bad rep. And so I get this idea to do these things called teen parties, which when I was in middle school were a big thing, but had kind of died out because they turned very like hood and ghetto and a lot of fights and whatnot there. And so what ends up happening is that I do these teen parties there. I rent the place out. And once a month, it starts off with 200 people and I grow it to 1,500 people. And I'm making $10,000 like once a month cash profit doing parties like the Halloween rave where people would dress up, Christmas rave, we had a paint party throwing paint at the crowd, foam parties, all of these different things. And it was guerrilla marketing. Facebook was just kind of like becoming a thing. It had existed, but it was more so than ever. Where you would invite people to an event page. And back then, if you invited your friends list to an event page, if they clicked attending, they would actually click attending. Now it's all like spam and stuff. Twitter was, kind of a thing. Instagram was just beginning. but Facebook was your main source of promo and flyers. You would go around passing flyers, going to the movie theater, the mall. I would go, our school is the largest in Connecticut with 3,000 kids. I would leave class right before. My backpack was never filled with books. It was always filled with flyers. And I would say I had to go to the bathroom and I would never come back. I'd go to the top of the staircase and pay $100 to other kids to go to all the staircases. You go to the top floor. As soon as that bell rings and there's hundreds of kids, you drop a stack of flyers and it hits everyone on the way down. And it would just be flooded. And we did that in every high school. And we grew this brand. And I built this business called This Is Where It's At Entertainment.
I was about to say, okay, this is where it's at entertainment.
Because if our parties were going to be where it was at for the night, why not call it that? Yeah. And that was my first official business.
And you booked a lot of big names like Tiger.
So at first these were just regular no-name DJs. Yeah, these were raves.
Younger people.
At that time, that's when EDM really blew up with Avicii and all of those guys. Okay. So I was the first person to bring that type of music to Danbury. But then this is where I get into trouble because I then go and raise money from friends and family. We wanted to do a Wiz Khalifa show. Okay. My first show ever was Big Sean. Yeah. Then I tried to do Wiz Khalifa, didn't work out. We couldn't get him. And then I put the money into a string of concerts with some kind of fairly well-known names. You probably know who Huey Mack is because he's kind of in that whole space. So we did all these shows, Mike Stud, Huey Mack, these kind of guys. And then Struggle Jennings is actually on tour with Huey Mack right now, which is kind of ironic. But then the first show loses money. And that's when I make the decision to either, you have two options. You tell everyone that it lost money, your friends and family, or you want to maintain that image of success, which I had all throughout high school. And this was my first real failure in life, 18 years old.
So this hurt.
So I lied and said it made money when it didn't. And ever since that one lie, that set me on a domino effect of more lies. Because every time you tell a lie, you got to cover up old lies and this and that. Ego. And I got, ego. I had a big ego. I was very arrogant and over my head. Because I had so much success. And looking back on it, all I had to do was keep doing the teen parties and then maybe go to college and do like club nights or something, do that same model. And I would have been probably well off and then probably would have transitioned to a regular job and we wouldn't be here right now. But it was all part of the story. And every part of my story like keeps going and going and going. Like I should have either been dead or it never should have worked out. But for some reason, every little thing worked out. So I have this incredible story.
Wow.
So you wanted to get into concerts with celebrities is kind of where that shift went from the teen parties.
Yeah, because teen parties kind of got oversaturated and died out. And that was in my head. I'm always thinking next level, like to put into perspective, podcasting, right? So my next step, aside from what I do now is okay, to bring it to the next level, you either, get like some type of big deal with like a Spotify or an iHeart or an Apple, or simultaneously you bring on celebrities who have been to prison before, like the Jelly Rolls or whoever of the world. That would be like your next step. So you compare that to back then. Okay, I'm doing no-name DJs no one knows about, but still making money. What's the next step? It's the bigger acts. Yeah. So, I ended up booking Tyga, Chief Keef, Kid Ink, these big names at a young age at 18 years old, but every show lost money.
Okay, so every show lost money.
Every show, whether it was some were going to make money and a series of unfortunate events happened.
Yeah, what didn't you know how to do?
Everything.
Okay.
We didn't know everything. We got taken advantage of. There's in that business, there's too many hands in the pot.
Okay.
Like you want to book, Big Sean, you're going through a manager who knows the manager who knows the manager. And at every person you go to, there's an extra $5,000 added on.
You believed all that. Like you believed when you're talking to someone, because anytime I'm like, that person isn't involved. Like you're going five people down. I'm not ever going to trust that person's actually going to be there.
I mean, the music business is more based on money than relationships. Like I could get an artist right now I want it on the show, but you have to pay for that. It's money. Podcasting, on the other hand, is relationships. It's about who you know to sit down. You could pay someone all the money in the world in podcasting. If they don't want to sit down with you, they don't want to sit down with you.
If you do get them to sit down with you and they dislike you,
they want a good interview, yeah.
Or they'll just get up and leave.
I was talking to a music exec. We had lunch like a few months ago in LA, and he was like, "Hey, I could get you so and so on the podcast, huge name. for 40 grand. I'm like, dude, podcasts don't even make that much money in an episode. I would never recoup that on YouTube, for example. You know, the podcasting industry is not based on money at all.
Oh.
There'll be some people that try to hit a quick lick on you and charge.
Well, what happens? What about like the Hawk Tua girl, right? Like overnight viral sensation. Everybody and their mamas were Hawk Tua, spit on that thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The next thing you know, she signed a better with Jake Paul. She starts the Talk Tua podcast.
Yeah, how does that work?
Yeah, I would assume.
I mean,
they were paying her to go on those podcasts, because when she popped up out of the scene after being searched for weeks, she popped up and went on podcast with merchandise. And there were people were trying to find her everywhere to get her on podcast.
I don't think they paid her for those. I think she did it for free because she was making money on merch. She was building her brand, promoting her socials, and the bigger she gets, that's why they give her her own show. Jake Paul pays her to host it. He keeps the revenue from ads and stuff. That's not a podcast that lasts forever.
Right.
I think she's doing it for a salary. She's probably making $100K or whatever for that, which is probably pretty standard, but she's not an interviewer. You could tell it's just like kind of cringe. She has her friend on it. She's not going to, that's not her purpose in life. It's either going to work or it's not.
Yeah.
Most celebrities that start podcasts, they last for 10 episodes. You know, Tony,
Listen to a bunch of them.
his ex-girlfriend, the ski mask girl, started the podcast. They go like 10 episodes. It's so hard. She's viral in the moment now. She's going to do it. But long term, it's not a show. That's like a talk type thing, comedy type thing where it's the same. Yeah, anyone that's been on her podcast has gone on 9 million other podcasts, you know?
Yeah.
It's nothing special. It's just she's doing her thing. Got to respect the hustle. That's part of it. That fits the equation. Every celebrity, for the most part, has a podcast at some point, you know? A lot of these influencers try it and they do it. But it's a lot to maintain, especially if in her sense, it's easy because she has it all handed to her.
Yeah.
Like she has the production team, everything, it's all pieced together, you know? Yeah. But if you're going to go in and grind like what we do for our show and stuff, it's a different ball game, you know? And also it's more genuine in our sense because it was built long term. Yeah. I built every follower. I wasn't handed anything. When I had the HBO doc, no one knew who HBO Max was at the time. I didn't get any followers from that, you know?
I didn't even know you had
Yeah, you've been on a couple of documentaries.
Yeah, I've had some big things happen and it never blew up my social medias, which is, I think, happened for a reason. For when that big Netflix doc or whatever happens, then it'll really elevate me. But there's so many people like the Billy McFarlands and the Anna Delveys and people that went to prison that get these shows and they blow up overnight, you know? It's different. I have, 75,000 now almost on Instagram. That was a grind. That was 2 years of just hard work. TikTok is going to be my first platform that hits a mill. Yeah. YouTube, all of this, it's just like I earned that. It wasn't, no one shouted me out. I didn't have some celebrity repost me or post anything. Right. It's just been grinding.
Like, I freaking get it, bro. Like, and Chelsea understands that too. Like, we deleted my social media about 4 years ago and, started from scratch. And I didn't have but 5,000 followers, and I was
just like, I cannot delete this.
We worked hard for that 5,000. And then, less than a year later, we were at 75,000 followers. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And now, we're at 350,000 and that's all organic. We didn't pay for any of that. We didn't run no ads, no boosters. Like, those are people that follow our content because they like the content I make. And
the difference is you're doing it yourself too. Yeah. Me and JD were talking about this. JD has blown up so much because he's there doing it himself. Mm-hmm. There's no team. I will never have a team. I think long term, when I get to that level, I'll have like an assistant, but it'll always be me making the clips because that's what works. I'm never going to pass that on to anyone. I'm never going to have an agent in that sense because that's what makes it powerful. These people that we relate to and connect to, I'm DMing them personally, not some bot or an assistant. We're having those conversations. They get to know me and stuff. They're interacting. How many celebrities respond to comments? Very few.
Yeah.
We're there constantly responding, and that's what builds community more so. That
also builds the engagement and growth on social media.
Exactly. Right? It's so important.
The more,
it's so important. You see so many celebrities that don't do that. And obviously there's outliers like the A-listers that they'll still get good engagement regardless, and they don't have to respond to anything. Mm-hmm. But if you want to make it in social media right now as a new person, you got to do all that. And it's a full-time gig. Yeah. I'm up, like when I get into bed, I'm responding to comments. I'm doing this. I'm grinding it out. That's hard work, you know, and it's exhausting. Yeah. It really is.
It pays out good though.
So I want to get back to so you start lying to people.
Yeah, so I end up losing all this money and I'm promising people crazy interest rates to borrow more money, doing all this stuff. And, you know, December 2013, I'm 18 years old and I owe $1.2 million out between the losses, the money I promised people, the profits, everything. Some of the investors who were kids, because there's parents and kids invested, the kids who thought they lost their entire life savings, say they gave me a couple grand and it turned into 25 grand because they kept rolling it over or based on lies and everything like that. They go to the cops. Now, had the kids never went to the cops, I don't think the parents would have ever, because they understood business. They knew it was an investment. They lost money. But the kids go to the cops, and that perks the cops' interest, because you got to understand the climate at the time is I was named top 10 most fascinating people in Connecticut. You know, there's all this press. At this point, I own the nightclub.
Those are the parties.
I bought Tuxedo Junction, and it went out of business. So I didn't really own it. I just rented the building, you know, and I was rebuilding it. I called it Sky Bar at the time. So I'm in the paper a lot. Teenage whiz kid. Me and my dad were going to open up this burger shop called Bick's Burgers. We're doing all these things. I'm in the press. So that was a sexy headline to these local detectives that have never had a high profile case like that, you know?
They pop their cherry on you.
Pop their cherry. They take the case. They're pushing hard. And they bring it, long story short, they bring it to the Connecticut State's Attorney. Okay. He declines to prosecute. Had this been a state case, I would have gotten a slap on the wrist, first-time offender. I had no criminal record, probation, and paid the restitution, which would have been totally fair, which was what they should have done as a kid with no criminal record.
No, they had a point to prove with EMB.
Yeah, they were after me heavy. And it kind of shows you how they weaponize for political or celebrities or anything like that, because they do have this option. And I'll give you a great example. I mentor kids now in the juvenile system that will get probation, and they got caught bringing a gun to school, threatening people's lives, their physical lives with a fucking gun. And meanwhile, I'm getting brought through the ringer, you know?
For not giving
bad business to see.
Yeah. So
for making huge mistakes as a kid, a child's mentality. I made big mistakes.
People didn't get their money back.
They lost money. This was all about money. If I had the money to pay, it's always about money in these cases. If you pay the money, there's no case.
So what was the law that was broken?
So what ends up happening is the state declines. Someone knew someone in the federal system. U.S. attorney gets the case. This is the feds. Now, my case, all said and done,
game changed at that point.
Yeah, but my case is very low for the feds. I mean, the out-of-pocket was only $480,000. And I think that's what people lost. I think that they thought it was way more when they took on that case. I think they thought I was dealing in the millions, because most fraud cases you hear about are a lot of money. Even tax evasion cases, $700,000, $800,000, $1 million, you know? $480,000 is not a lot, but they end up charging me with wire fraud, money laundering, and making a false statement, because the first day I met with the FBI or postal inspectors, they set me up, didn't tell me I was under investigation. I didn't have a lawyer. That was the other big part to this, is that I went to hearings and meetings with those agents without a lawyer, because I was literally just trying to clear my name.
Well, what was your parents saying at that point?
They didn't know. I went in the beginning. Yeah, I went to those initial ones, gave them everything. I put the whole case together for them. I brought them contacts.
Tell it on yourself.
I brought the paperwork because I didn't think I did anything wrong. I'm just like, I made a mistake. I never sat out to steal from anyone. I interview fraud people for a living right now. And these are some dirtbags, some of these people that will sit there and tell you to your face that they have no intention to ever pay that money back.
Right.
That they did that deliberately, that they knew what they were doing. And they're grown, middle-aged people. And some of them got less time than me. Yeah. But meanwhile, I was a kid that the first time I met with the U.S. attorney, there was no offer for probation. Yeah. They wanted prison time off the bat, which is why I took it to trial. So I ended up going.
What was the offer the feds came at you?
I think it was high. It was like 3 or 4 years. I got less time really, after trial. Yeah.
Which is completely abnormal usually. So usually if you refuse, right, the feds are set up on a point system. Mm-hmm. And so now the judge does have the autonomy to go below the sentencing grid under the points if he so chooses. but it's very rare that happens. Like slim to none. Like I think out of all the times I've testified for people at federal court, which has been 6, I even testified for Mary Beth, and she got bad sentenced. You know, she got caught with 2.5 pounds of meth.
COVID.
Yeah. And she had turned her life around, had 3 years clean. She was going into schools, all the stuff. And they sentenced her severely. And then another friend of ours, Chad, Chad was involved in church. He was working at Next Step. He had 3 or 4 years clean. He'd been fighting his case. And they sentenced him to 17 years in the federal penitentiary.
I think that's who I met, right? That was turning himself in or getting ready to. His sentencing was coming up.
Yeah, that was Chad.
I met Chad
Wells, yeah. What? And so the church actually...
that was the disabled guy, right?
No, he wasn't disabled.
He was missing a leg. He had sentencing too.
No, that's Brad. That was the guy that worked for us.
And what happened to him?
He's free. He didn't have any charges.
I didn't realize he had sentencing.
He had sentencing coming up at the time, right?
No.
Oh, so then maybe I'm thinking of Chad who was with him that day.
Yeah, Chad would have been with him. And so the church actually takes a monthly offering to send Chad $100 a week down there in the feds.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. He's got a lot of support here. That's how good of a guy he was. And then once I testified for a sponsee of mine named Matt, and he had a gun charge, and he'd already been to state prison 3 or 4 times. Points was ridiculous. And they sentenced him below the grid and didn't give him time at all.
Yeah, I think the benefit of going to trial is the judge can see the whole case unfold. Rather, if you take a plea deal, the judge is just going off of the information. And granted, it also depends on the judge you have. Like I had a very caring young judge who actually was invested in learning all of the facts of the case. And had I not violated supervised release, even after losing at trial, I think I would have got probation because, you know, they kept trying to violate my bond. He was in my corner. He gave me the benefit of the doubt. I just think that the trial showed everything. It shows the whole case rather than a sheet of paper that says they did X, Y, and Z and they pled guilty to this.
So you didn't have a lawyer, and then
I did for trial.
So it's building up, and then when does it hit you that you're like, uh-oh, like I maybe should have done something differently. I need to get a lawyer.
Right after that first meeting with postal inspectors, but by then it was too late. But I got a lawyer. We went to trial. It was almost a month long. It was like a high school reunion with all the people testifying.
Right, because they were all friends.
Yeah, they were all friends.
Were they still friends?
Most of them not. I mean, what sealed the coffin was my business partner. I took all the heat for.
Okay.
And they flipped him right before, you know, the day before he was going to testify, gave him probation in the state. He was equally involved. You know, he made just as many mistakes and he flipped on me. And all he had to pay was like $30,000 restitution. And he got a great deal. But in hindsight, who ended up with the better deal? Because now he's a bartender doing whatever with a college degree, and I'm the one that has this because of what he did. So it all worked out for the better in that sense. So anyways, I lose the trial. I'm now 20 years old was when the trial was. I lose, awaiting sentencing, out on bond. Now I'm running this club, Tuxedo Junction, all throughout this trial.
So you weren't locked up.
I was on bail, yeah.
Still, okay.
So most of the time in the feds, you don't pay to get out. Yeah. It's not like the state. All they
either hold you to trial or let you go.
Yeah, so it's, are you a danger to the community or are you a flight risk? I had no money. They take my passport. I'm a kid. I'm living with my parents and I'm not a danger.
Are you thinking I could go to prison?
No, I never thought I would go to prison until they actually slapped the cuffs that I was going to prison. And even then, I figured there was going to be a Hail Mary. And they were going to say, wait, this is just, you know, a test or something.
Jesus was going to come through with the last minute miracle.
Even when I did get my bond violated, I figured, okay, the judge is just giving me these 3 weeks in here until sentencing just to, you know, show me like a scared straight. So it wasn't really until I actually got that 3 years.
You're literally in denial the whole time.
I was in denial that whole way until I got those 3 years. And I was still in denial all through the appeal process and everything. I would say about halfway through my sentence is when I was like, okay, fuck, I'm here.
Which you'd never been in trouble before.
Never. So after I got indicted, they started hitting me with misdemeanor charges, like violation of liquor, without a permit, stupid stuff related to the club, because I am operating this club. And that's the biggest misconception of my story. because the headlines always got it wrong. Tuxedo Junction had nothing to do with the case. It was concerts that were happening at different schools over a few month period. I was operating Tuxedo Junction longer than what I was accused of in the actual indictment. So Tuxedo Junction's where I'm booking the big acts, Steve Aoki, the Chainsmokers, Blau, Adventure Club, big acts, all while I think that's the most exciting part of my story, is that I'm able to do this with no money, $1 million in debt, taking money from, drug dealers and bikers to help me establish this. And I'm developing a gambling problem, which at the time I didn't look at it as a gambling problem because I was winning. I was able to take $500, go across the border because I wasn't 21, couldn't go to the Connecticut casino. I would go to New York and gamble and turn it into $25,000 and use it to pay the expenses of the club. The club would have been successful had I not been in so much bad debt before, because I would make some money in one night and just instead of paying the electric or paying a vendor or anything, I would pay other people that I was just trying to pay back. It was just a mess. It was one big financial mess, no accounting, nothing. There was times where I had a $30,000 bill to the electric company, so I took a pile of wood and hid the meter from them. I got away with it for months. Just I did whatever I had to do, And then when they shut it off one night, I rented a generator, got the generator put in, gave them a bad check to get the generator, hooked it up illegally, all of this crazy shit. I always got lucky and made it through somehow. And that was just the universe, God, whatever it is, people believe in, that was getting me through to have this incredible story. So I end up, now I'm 21 years old. This is 2016, October, 1 month before sentencing. The people that were working with me at the club all throughout my life, and this has taught me a really important lesson. I've always had groups of friends that I thought were my friends and people I trusted and best friends around me that really only latched onto me because of what I had at the time.
Yeah.
And this is a huge lesson because every single time they would always betray me. My first friends in high school end up throwing me under the bus. My best friend business partner throws me under the bus. And now this new group of friends who were so supportive when I got indicted and helped me through the club, I really thought, wow, these are ride or dies. They got me. They see me for who I am. They throw me under the bus because they got greedy and wanted to take the club from me and told the FBI I was going out of state to gamble. I get my bond revoked, pissed off the judge, end up getting 3 years in federal prison and a year home confinement. My guidelines after trial were 8 to 12 years. The government agreed that because of my age, we should depart. So they were asking for 6 to 8. We were asking for 0. We were asking for house arrest, probation. So the judge, in a way, was fair and met in the middle, 3 to 4, and then a year at house arrest. So that's when I went off to federal prison at 21 years old.
So I gotta ask, let's talk a little bit about what that federal prison experience looked like, right? So you're 20 years old and you're walking into a United States prison. Tell me about that journey.
Well, so all throughout my story, I always thought the story was crazy. Every month or every aspect of it, when I'm doing the teen parties, wow, that's crazy. When I'm doing the concerts, wow, that's crazy. When I'm on trial, wow, that's crazy. When I'm running the club, wow, that's crazy. But it continues to get crazy because I'd say my prison experience is then even the craziest part of it all, because the shit that happened to me in there.
Yeah, can we talk about it?
That created,
everything.
That created everything. I just didn't know it at the time. It was just another part of the story of the adventure. When I first got there, I was in a detention center. Like when you're waiting to go, it's like a county jail, but there's not really county jails. It's detention centers, and that's what what people relate to. 60 Days In, prison TV shows where you have the pod, the unit, the tables, the cells. That's what I thought prison was going to be like, because that's where I spent my first 2 months. Well, when I finally get designated, I thought I was going to a camp. They messed up my points. I had 12 points. You need 11 to get to a camp, and they said I didn't have my high school diploma, which I did. And because of my age, if you're under 25, they rack your points even higher for the actual designation. So they send me to a low, and they send me to Fort Dix, which is
Fort Dix.
Yeah, it's an old Army base converted into a prison. One of the largest low security federal prisons in the country. 5,000 inmates. There's 2 sides. This thing literally looks like a college campus. It is huge. You got different buildings, libraries, units. They're 12-man rooms. No cameras on the floor anywhere except for like at the CO's office.
Prison, because this
federal
is
prison.
Things that look like that. Okay.
Yeah, which TV shows don't really get into. It's never really about the feds. It'll be about like maximum security prisons, or Orange is the New Black does a good depiction of a woman's federal prison. But there's not really any about like men's federal prison. They're bunk beds, 12-man rooms, no locks on the doors. You're free to roam around the building. There's open, like there's individual bathroom stalls. It's just crazy. It's literally like a college, a rundown college.
I just watched some of this on the Martha documentary. I looked at it. It looks like a college campus. I was like, oh my gosh, is that where she was?
It's crazy. So, my first, my first negative experience in prison was when I went to the chow line, the chow hall at Fort Dix. And I didn't know that it was one of the largest compounds for sex offenders. And a lot of people, will say in comments and stuff, sex offenders can't walk the yard. Well, in the feds, in low security prisons, they are allowed to walk the yard because there's nowhere else for them to go. They're protected there. If you fight a sex offender or anything, you're going to get kicked up, So I'm at this chow hall. I think it's great because I got all the trays of food. It's good food. There's a buffet line kind of. There's, puddings, there's salads. It's a cool experience. And I go and I sit at the white table, like a group of guys where there's an open seat because I'm white. And that's why,
all you've seen is prison movies.
All I'd seen was Orange is the New Black and some 60 Days In. That's all I knew. That was the only information I knew about prison. Sit with your race. That's what I knew and thought of. So I go and sit at this table and, they stop eating.
Oh my God.
When I sit down and everyone's looking up at me and I'm still chowing down. And I had just gotten off like the prison bus to bring us there. And we had just made it past count. And you're always happy when you get off the bus and you make it to your first chow. So you're not given like a cold tray. And I'm just sitting there eating. And then this one guy everyone's staring at me. And this one guy looks at me and he's like, hey, you. And I turn around. I'm thinking, who is he talking to? And I realized he was talking to me. And, he tells me, he's like, he tells me this thing about paperwork. You got to have paperwork to sit here. This is a good paperwork table. What are your charges? And I'm like, well, I'll get the paperwork. No problem. I'm sure I can make some calls, when I get situated. And I'm here for fraud. And at the time, if there was no 21-year-old white kids in federal prison for fraud, there was a ton of other race young individuals that were caught on RICO drug cases. There was no one there for fraud that was my age. No one. I was probably the youngest person there in the entire system for fraud. And he says, that explains the paperwork. And he said, I need it now. I said, well, there's no way for me to get it now. And when I told him that I was there for fraud, he said, that's what they all say.
Who's they?
I didn't understand what he was saying, who the they were, until he said, you have to sit over there. And I looked behind me of who the they were, and there was a table of pedophiles, of chomos. That's what they call them in the feds, child molesters.
Tell by looking.
I had the glasses, the round black glasses.
Like the ones you're wearing now.
I don't like the ones I'm looking now, these iconic glasses. I had longer hair, really chubby cheeks, and I looked even younger than I look now. And
fit in.
I fit in, and they were all looking at me behind me like I'm fresh prey. And I got up and sat at that table, and it was
staring at you like a biscuit.
It was one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. Eventually people came to know who I was, and they looked at my case. But at the chow hall, no one has like a contraband phone on them. But this guy was like a guy that I was down, white guy, probably came from a medium or a max, worked his way down, probably gang affiliated or something. Like one of those solid white dude type of people that are really heavy on the paperwork stuff. And that's what happened. They made me get up and sit at that table. And that was my first politic aspect of prison, because in the detention centers, there's no politics because everyone's fighting their case.
Right.
People will tell you about what's to be expected if they've already been to federal prison before, but I wasn't prepared for that. I didn't know what that was.
Now, after that, you went and saw your case manager, right?
Yeah, I went.
Tell me about that.
And that's what I was going to say. Did you ever make it back over to that table?
So I was so excited to see the case manager because, in high school,
you think your counselor's there to help.
Counselors, case managers are there to help. And so I go on day one. I'm like, hey, when do I get to see my case manager? You see the counselor pretty quick, but the counselor doesn't do shit. In federal prison, counselor is there for bunk assignments, job assignments. Do you have a GED? Stuff like that.
Right.
So when do I see the case manager? And these case managers are so hard to get a hold of. Their door's always shut. It's never open. That open house thing that they do every day is at the worst time. They make it during your lunch. So it's either you eat or you go see them. And half the time they're not there.
Right.
And they were like, they have 30 days to see you. They always wait till like the last possible second, those final days to see you. So I had to wait a month before I actually got to see him. And he called me down, young white guy. Yeah. And this is where you find out, you get your actual sheet of paper that shows how much time you have, your good time, when you're getting released, your points, everything. And I walk in there because I had some questions about, well, why aren't I at a camp? This has to be a mistake. You know, why am I at a low security prison? Yada, yada, yada. I'm a first time offender, no criminal record. And I walk in, they don't even acknowledge you when you come in. They're like still doing paperwork, looking busy. Yeah. And the first time he looks up, he's like, what are you here for? I know what you're here for. You're going to have a hard time here. Without even looking at my file, nothing, no preparation. He automatically
He's like, you're not going to do good here.
Yeah, he thought I was a sex offender. That's what he thought. Because and if they're labeling you that, then
you just had that look, huh?
I still have the look. If I went to federal prison,
you don't look like a predator to me.
But that's the label there, you know, with no paperwork, you stand out.
I can see what you're doing.
But that way I looked is my biggest asset now.
You look like you touched something.
No, I know what you're talking about. And, you know, for some of the glasses, you know.
That's my biggest asset now, though, because when I make a video about prison, that gets people to stop. Because there's no way this kid that looks like McLovin went to prison. It turned into my biggest asset. That was my biggest strength.
So right off the rip, you have a problem with the convicts. They're like, mislabel you. Then the person who's there to help you mislabels you. And there's another situation with a prison guard. We got 30 minutes and I really want to get into your redemption piece. So can you tell me about the prison guard situation and just tell us that whole story?
So what ends up happening is, you know, I run into some issues at that first prison. I get extorted. Then I get caught with a phone.
Well, tell me about the extortion on the phone. Don't skip over that. Chelsea's going to want to hear that too.
So I'm, you know, no one really tells you how to move around in prison. And when you're a white kid that comes from a little bit of money and, you know, his parents are sending them money, people get jealous. And I'm doing gambling. I'm playing dice. I'm playing spades. I buy myself a cell phone. And some guys come on the yard that, you know, that came at the time Obama had reduced a lot of like the crack or the cocaine sentences. These guys are able to work their way down to a low. At these mediums and high securities, there's not some white boy who's not with a car or a gang or anything running around doing his own thing. They come, they try to say, hey, we'll protect you if you pay us like $1,200 a month. Okay. I'm like, I don't need any protection. I'm good. Yeah. They're like, well, we know you have a cell phone. We'll cover it for you. We'll hold it for you. And I'm like, I'm good. I'm straight. I don't need that. Slaps the glasses off my face. And that's why, like everyone says in the comments when I told the story, my cheeks are still red from that slap.
Oh, that's the slap.
That's the slap that did it.
Did it hurt?
Yeah, it hurt. My glasses flew across the room in the bathroom.
Oh gosh, that makes me want to cry. Yeah. And so then what?
What ends up happening? No, I didn't attack them. There were two guys that had a big steel rod on them, you know.
A knife or a rod?
A rod. I mean, it was a shank, you know, a rod.
What was your first thought when dude put his hands on you?
I thought I was going to die right there. I was scared, you know. I was really scared. I was scared for my life. What ends up happening is this is like where the whole paying for protection thing comes. I don't actually go up to someone and say, hey, will you protect me? I just start befriending. In Fort Dix, the New Jersey car, they call it a car, like a gang. Yeah. All the New Yorkers run together. Were the biggest, and I was befriending some of the higher ups in there that have worked their way down. I've been there for years. We're in higher security prisons. I just took care of them with commissary. They didn't have any money. I took care of them. And these other guys that came from these higher security prisons looked at me as those guys bitch, so they couldn't do anything. But that wasn't really the arrangement, you know, but that shit was all optics. And I'm a likable, good personality type person. So I befriended them and I took care of them, and I was safe there.
Transactional relationship.
Exactly. Those guys ended up getting, set up because they were causing too much heat. Someone like put a phone on their bed or whatever, and they got ran up out of there. And so what ends up happening is I get caught on a phone. One of my cellmates was like, we were wrestling. Someone recorded it. Like we were just horsing around, and I was on the video. So they put me in the shoe in protective custody because they thought I was in fear of my life. I use that to my advantage. When they lock me up, I was like, fuck, this is my ticket out of here. I'm getting the fuck out of here. So I say, I'd like to go to Danbury. They send me to, that was their the deal they made with me, that I could go to Danbury as long as I didn't go back onto the compound. And they put me through diesel therapy. They end up,
Diesel.
diesel therapy is where they move. So at Danbury to New Jersey is like an hour and a half drive. Well, that's not how they take you there to get to the prison. I went to Brooklyn. I went to Philly. I was in the shoe in Philly with a bunch of sex offenders for 6 weeks. And then they always sold me up with the sex offenders because they knew I wouldn't cause trouble to the other white guys. Then I finally make it to Danbury, which is my hometown. That's the federal prison that like Orange is the New Black is based on. That's where a lot of like the female celebrities go and whatnot. Steve Bannon was just there. And I'm there on the yard for a day when the lieutenant calls me, locks me up, puts me back in the shoe after I've been in the shoe for like 3 or 4 months. What happens is one of the guards who was like a super cop there reported that I dated his cousin. I was friends with him. He's been in my house for barbecues. So they locked me up, put me in the shoe, conflict of interest. And that's where guards started calling me like Squints from the Sandlot in there. And I became like the orderly.
Is that true though, that you dated somebody?
Yeah, I dated his cousin. I knew him. He didn't have to report it though. I wasn't going to try to use my relationship with him to get stuff smuggled in. He was being a super cop. He screwed up my whole shit. I could have had a comfortable stay in Danbury. Everyone knew me by that point. I was like famous kind of in the prison. I had guards that used to work for me at the club as bouncers. He kind of did me dirty, but he also did me well because that created more for the story. So I'm in the shoe another kind of like 3 months, and they finally put me on a plane when they were supposed to send me closer to home into camp. They lowered my camp points and instead jerked me around, put me on Con Air. I go on Con Air, go to Oklahoma, to Chicago, and then I finally make it to Oxford, Wisconsin prison camp, which turned out to be very sweet. This was 2018. I'm there for a year. Everyone has contraband cell phones. There's no fence. There's a bocce ball court. There's a volleyball court with sand outside, basketball courts, a nice library, computer room. There's only 100 inmates. They have a dog program where inmates have dogs. They have all these cool things. I was the cheesecake man. I made cheesecakes. People were running through the woods to hook up with their wives. I was running through the woods to get care packages, McDonald's, cheeseburgers, protein powder. You were living good. Anything you wanted, you were good.
You could get it.
Yeah, and it was also the last 6 months were during the government shutdown. So the guards didn't give a shit. There were some hillbilly type, relaxed guards out there letting you do your thing. They were all cool. There was the occasional super cop at night from the guys that would come up from the medium and do a count, but it was a chill environment, And I ended up working in the bakery there. And that's the infamous story of the guard that tried to get my biscuits.
Okay.
I'm working in the bakery, and one morning I was on the morning shift, me and my cellmate, which there were like these little quad rooms, which there was 4-man rooms, but we were under capacity, so it was like 2-door room. And he wakes me up and not him, and he said he didn't have to work today. And so I go to the chow hall and into the bakery kitchen, and I'm scooping muffin mix out of the pre-made muffin mix into this container.
Yeah, Mr. Muffin Man.
I was the muffin man. And I'm sitting there, and it's this creepy young prison guard who was an asshole to everyone else but me, always staring at me in the chow line.
All state.
Yeah, gave me extra trays, let me smuggle cream cheese, eggs, anything. Would give me whatever I wanted.
He let you smuggle cream cheese.
The brick of I would walk out of there with a brick of Philadelphia every time. He would just hand it to me. Get whatever I want.
To take
Old brick.
yourself?
Yeah, to make the cheesecakes. I would just ask him anything I wanted. anything. I just thought he was being nice. I thought he was just...
But he's hateful and mean to everybody else.
Me and dick to everyone else. Search people. He was a superstar.
Sweet as cherries to you.
Sweetest guy. And I just thought he understood my perspective was, well, most of those guys were there for an intentional crime and I made a mistake. And
So there's this pattern of denial from the beginning of your story all the way to this part. Like you are just in denial about circumstances, bro.
yeah, so that's what happens. And I'm scooping that muffin mix. And I give people the benefit of the doubt too. And all of a sudden I feel like a little touch on my elbow. And I'm in like my khaki outfit, short sleeve shirt. And there's like a little rub on my elbow. And I'm thinking I have like flour or dough or muffin mix on it, you know? And that he's just getting it off because when I turn my head to the right.
Because you're in denial again.
So I go back to scooping the muffin mix. It happens again. Only this time he's like massaging my elbow and then my lower arm. And then he's massaging down to my butt and my thigh. And it was like, this went on for like 2 minutes. I'm like, you have got to be kidding me.
This
isn't hard. Yeah, this is the kitchen cop. It's just me and him. It's like 5 a.m, 6
It is a correctional officer fondling your butt.
And there is no cameras in there. And it's his word against mine. I'm not going to hit him. I got 4 months left of my sentence. Honestly, what was going through my mind is let me use this as an opportunity to get home early if this goes anywhere. Because then I could just say, hey.
If it goes anywhere.
That's what I tried to do later on. I wrote to them when they were doing their investigation. I said, listen, I'll drop this whole thing. Just let me go to the halfway house now, you know? Let's make a deal. That never happened, but they also kind of let me like continue to run through the woods and have a phone. So I think...
So he's rubbing your butt.
Yeah, he rubs my butt. That happens. And I go back to my cellmate. The whole prison finds out about it.
Tell him...
I didn't say anything.
You just sucked it up in that moment.
Yeah, it was just weird. It was a weird moment. I go tell my cellmate nothing's kept a secret in prison. Everyone knows about it. Everyone's making fun of me. But they're like, don't snitch them out. You're gonna bring, you know, heat to the building.
Right.
Maybe we can use them to get stuff in, which we really didn't need him to because we could get whatever in we wanted. Then a couple weeks later, I hadn't really run into him on shifts. I was kind of trying to avoid him.
Yeah.
And I go into the walk-in freezer to get a tray of cookies to bake off.
And there he is, staring at you like the muffin man.
Normally, these guards...
Inside the freezer?
So the freezer is normally kept locked because that has all the good stuff and it's also attached to the walk-in. Normally, you go to the guard, he unlocks it. A really sweet guard will unlock it and forget to lock it back up and disappear, and that's when you steal from everything when he's back in his office. Or if he's kind of a dick, he'll unlock it and stand outside, you know, and wait for you to grab the stuff and then relock it. This guy unlocks it. I goes in, he follows in behind me and shuts the door behind me. And I have this tray of cookies in my hands to bake off, and I'm trying to get past him, and he forces me to rub my ass across his cock while I'm trying to get out of this freezer.
And
with
by
the tray.
force, you mean he's like just close enough to you?
Close enough. It was a small doorway, you know?
You couldn't get...
Yeah. So, and you know, I walked past him and that was the final straw. That's when we reported it. Prison system.
How did you feel in that moment?
It sucked. It was like demeaning and embarrassing because a situation like that, it's just like you feel helpless because you can't touch him. Like I was smart enough to know not to touch him, like hit him. If you push him or you hit him, there's no winning that.
You are literally so in that moment, I would imagine that you realize that you were in this complete power differential. You're completely powerless, helpless, vulnerable, humiliated, like helpless.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest,
that's all that...
I think the most demeaning thing though is like the shoe in prison, and when you know when they strip you out to go on a visit, and also when they handcuff you and bring you the shower, like you're literally like a caged animal, you know. At least when you're actually in the camps and the lows, like there are guys that will never have a pair of handcuffs in them other than the time they get arrested because they just do their time in one facility, and you never have to do that if you don't get into any trouble or anything, you know.
Yeah,
you experience a lot of freedom, but when you're in the shoe, when you're in these detention centers, you're treated like an animal, you know. And even if you're there for a non-violent crime or anything like that.
Yeah.
So,
and the shoe is...
solitary.
And you did you just say like before you did...
6 months, I was 290 pounds and I went down to 165 when I got out.
And you were by yourself in there the whole time?
Sometimes they would put a cellmate, most of the time a cellmate.
Okay.
So that's what happened when you eat. So the guard, we're in the freezer.
Yep.
You decide this is it. I'm done with this. You're not.
We report it to the head kitchen cop. He escalates it. The investigators meet with me. They order him to go to the compound. So I was like, I don't want to go to the shoot. Like, this is messed up. I only have a few months left. They decide to keep me there, launch their investigation. To this day, I've never heard the outcome of their investigation. Who knows what happened? I had a guard from that same prison reach out to me when I blew up on social media and said, hey, was it so-and-so? And I said, yes. He's like, yeah, we don't know what happened to him, but he's been accused of doing that before. That guy's a creep. So that was kind of my validation that this actually happened. I'm not dreaming about those. Yeah. The guy was a creepo, you know, and he liked, I think, little kids because of the way I look. There's 100 other men at that campus. I'm the one that looks the way I look. Yeah. So add up.
It sucks that we experience things like that at the hands of officers and people in the justice system. But then just today we were eating breakfast and multiple law enforcements here in Clarksville, Arkansas ran out of the restaurant to take pictures with you. They're like, holy smoke, you're Ian Bick. And how does that feel versus...
I love having law enforcement officers. Those are my favorite episodes on the show because every time I'm sitting down with a law enforcement officer, I just think that this dynamic I created where they are willing to come sit down with me, who the FBI made to be such a bad criminal. I think a couple things. One,
it's redemption.
It's redemption. And two, it kind of shows that they have a different opinion than and they're law enforcement themselves. Most law enforcement, I sit down, will say it was kind of silly they went after you or it was blown up or whatever it is. They are very understanding and they trust me enough to know, because there are some creators that law enforcement will not trust to sit down because of the reaction of their videos and stuff. They might like them, but they wouldn't sit down with them because they don't know where the conversation will go. I know not to cross certain boundaries. I know how to conduct a professional interview without asking, the wrong or questions in that sense. So I love those types of interviews. That's something I forgot to do it yesterday, but like in my talks, when I talk to the inmates about how I interview normal everyday people, I want to make sure I include officers and stuff because a lot of the officer stories are like the inmate stories. They just didn't end up there. And that's how they got into corrections, So I want to also encourage, hey, treat these officers who are good to you right, because they have a very similar story and they were in your shoes too at some point. So that's a big aspect to it too.
So in one sentence, how would you describe your prison experience?
It was definitely very shitty, but it was the best thing that could ever happen to me.
Yeah, you found purpose through that.
I had a very abnormal prison experience, but again, like you just said,
I mean, I don't think it's as uncommon as you think.
I think the moving around on a federal level is very uncommon.
Yeah.
For the charges I had in that short a time. I mean, I was in like 8 prisons in like 26 months.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And when I tell people that, most people think I'm a rat or a testified or a snitch or a chomo. Yeah. That is so uncommon. And the everything.
That's a lot. That's a lot of transfers.
That's the universe and God looking out to create the story.
Yeah.
That's an incredible prison story because that's going to make an incredible TV show or a movie or a documentary.
Book deal.
Yeah, because the prison, all these celebrities don't talk about prison. I think Jelly Roll is one of the first people that's actually talking about it and owning that. Well, look at all these other people, huge celebrities that went to prison before. They don't talk about it. They don't advocate for that.
Yeah.
It's not common,
That's why people are going crazy over them. Well, I know me and my family over the Martha documentary.
But they avoided prison in that. They barely got into it.
It was so good, though.
It was good, but they barely got into it. They barely got into prison.
See, I didn't feel like that. I thought it was...
We had to create our space.
Yeah. We broke a lot of barriers because for 4 years after I got out of prison, after I got out of that camp, I didn't talk about prison. People that worked with me at Whole Foods a couple people would be shy or they'd be like, that's a kid that went to prison. Yeah. Now I wear that shit like a badge.
Right.
I used to be embarrassed to be known as the kid that went to prison. Now that's what I'm known for.
Yeah, we're change makers. We shake the system up. It's like the world as they know it when it comes to the justice system is kind of like a snow globe. It was just settled and sat and people were accustomed to it, and this is the way it is. It's stigmatizing. You be ashamed. We refer to it as the second sentence, right? Like, so for people like Ian and I, we go do our time, we come home, we've paid our debt to society, we're done, we're off paper, We are completely rehabilitated, transformed, and then there's still things that we don't get to do because of the second sentence, which is, oh, you're one of them. You're a convict. You're a felon. Yeah, you can't rent a house. You can't purchase a house. You have to check the box to get employed. You're literally serving a second sentence, and it's not okay.
And it's also bigger than that in the sense where, you know, people are afraid to share their failures or the bad times in their life. So if you can own up about sharing a prison, which is very embarrassing and a bad time, you could essentially talk about these other things too.
Yeah.
It's just so relatable.
So your journey from prison to purpose wasn't always a successful one. Like, you got down and with the nitty gritty, and you did everything you could to keep the money coming, right? Like, you also had
this is his way.
Like, I hope we're gonna.
yeah, but we've only got like 12 minutes left. So
OnlyFans. So basically, you know, I work at Whole Foods. I end up.
Was that your name on OnlyFans?
It's Ian Bick. It was just Ian. I use my name. I have a catchy name, Ian Bick. It just works.
In your game.
Yeah, it's not a common.
You were shameless, bro.
It's really not a common name, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, I do this, and I quit my job after 4 years, and that was an incredible, humbling journey of working at Whole Foods and rebuilding my life.
Interesting.
And
you were making good money there too.
great. I was going to make over 100K. That was my first ever real 100K. I think my last pay stub for that tax year was like 80 something. I was really close. Benefits, everything was in my name. My parents weren't paying for everything. You know, I had everything I wanted. And, but I didn't have something internally, which was I was missing. And that was purpose. You know, I meet so many people that are, you know, they don't have the purpose, you know, they have a great job, this and that. But if you don't have purpose, then what else? Like, I grind now, and I don't I make a lot of money, but I don't have a lot of money because of like other business decisions. But it's still like, I'm still happy to be doing it. I don't have hatred to doing it because that's my purpose. So that's like the difference. So anyways, I go jump in, start making content, telling the stories that we just discussed and more. And that's what elevated my social platform. And, but I wasn't making any real money. You know, it wasn't paying me. Even Facebook, when they were paying great at that time, my tax form was messed up. So they didn't physically give me the money. So, you know, I'm grinding. I'm driving Uber. I was working at this yogurt business, and I was doing OnlyFans. I had an OnlyFans for 2 months. I had a few thousand followers on Instagram, and I was talking about OnlyFans. Never promoted it on the podcast, but you would put out my Instagram story. People were making fun of me. People that I went to school with and stuff, but I was doing what I had to do to grind. Like, I don't think I will ever not be able to cover a bill because I'm resourceful. Like, if I lost every platform tomorrow, I have no problem walking in to go get a job. Like, that's why I don't really feel for people that have no money. Like, I'll talk to people that were in my shoes getting out of prison, and they're like, I can't get a break. I can't get money. There's something. The question is, are you willing to do that something? Are you willing to go be a dishwasher? Yeah. You know, you could get a job at any restaurant. They will hire child molesters because they don't even care. They're not going to ask you for a record because they need someone to fill this position, you know? Yeah. You have to be hardworking. So I will always have that drive.
Yeah, that work ethic.
That's why I don't have a full team. I go walking. You should have seen me the other night walking through the airport. 5 freaking bags pushing this shit by myself, you know? Setting the whole thing up. You see the setup. I do that all myself. No one helps me, you know? So that is the grind. That's the part of it I'm never going to lose. Yeah. So that's what's carried me, and that's what's helped me. So I did those things until I started making, you know, real money. But I think the actual purpose part, I didn't have that purpose. I think a few things helped me find that purpose. Was one, seeing you speak that time was definitely very helpful. Like seeing you at that NARC conference last year and doing that first speaking thing, that was the first time I actually felt like, okay, I need to focus on the underdogs. Because when I started the podcast, it was always, what celebrity am I getting on? This is my goal. This is what I want to do. Next big thing, you know? So that was my vision. And then I think more and more over time until very recently, where the first time, like even I would say when I really blew up last year and in the beginning of this year, I was still very, need to get this celebrity, need to do this. I need everything now. I got to sit down with this person. Now, it couldn't be more opposite. If I can sit down with them, great. Like if it lines up, but I'm not chasing that. I'm just doing me. Like, I have so much content from so many people.
Yeah.
I get excited when I have a former gang leader sit down with me and give me a raw, real emotional interview that he's never given on anyone else's platform. I want the people that haven't been on 6 other people's platforms,
Which is, I get it. That's why I brought up your OnlyFans, because you haven't talked about it anywhere else. So
that's an
redirect back to the OnlyFans here. Did you make any money from that?
Yeah, I made $10,000 in 2 months. I made $10,000. That helped me pay the bills.
Were you selling feet pics? I mean, what?
I was selling, full nudes. I was selling booty pics.
What did your dad think about that?
He loves it. He respects my hustle and journey.
Does your dad have an OnlyFans?
No, he doesn't have an OnlyFans.
Is it called Only Dads?
So are you what is that called when you're a porn?
I don't know. I don't know what
Basically
the term
a porn star eating
I don't even know if that's proper nowadays, but was it when OnlyFans first started coming out too? And so you get this idea, you're like, what is
I think it had been out for like a year, but I was like, that's something I never thought I'd have a TikTok. So, that's like comparing it to TikTok, and now I have a TikTok, but I did it. I tried it. And then when I got my first real check from like YouTube, I'm like, I don't need to do this anymore. And I'm glad I didn't, because I have so many more followers now. I think that would have tarnished the brand.
What did that first real check from YouTube look like?
I got monetized very, very quickly. My YouTube journey has been incredible. I got 100,000 subscribers in 6 months, which is kind of against the norm. But all of it was timing. Shorts had just rolled out, and no other creator in our field were using shorts except for like me and JD, because we were the first new creators to the space, whereas everyone else was there and successful in it, but they hadn't adjusted to using short form content. So me and him hit it by storm, blew it up. Obviously, he's grown quicker than me, but we still had that rapid growth that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And my first check got monetized after like a month and a half. Was like $2,000. Then I went to 3, 5, and my first real check was like for $10,000
from YouTube, and that comes monthly.
I would say the biggest check I got that year, that's when I knew I made it, was we did $26,000 revenue last July of 2023. It was like $16,000 on TikTok, a couple grand on Facebook, and like $8,000 on YouTube. And that's when I was like, wow, this thing has legs.
Wow.
Yeah, you made it.
Yeah.
People really sleep on social media, right? Like hearing, JD sharing his stuff, and clearly he's got the most content draw for our space, right? But we're all focused on different things, right? Like mine is pure inspiration. Look, the underdog has a chance. Like if I can get a pardon, you can get a pardon. Yours is focused on letting people who historically haven't had a voice have a voice, right? Like let's hear your side of things. Let's hear the circumstances, the childhood trauma, what led you to do and be who you are, and what does life look like today. And JD's is kind of like one big war story. It's like
it's pop culture.
It is. People are fascinated.
It's like Wendy
with
Williams.
prison.
But it's the new, he is going more into like a news reporting segment. He's doing what these female influencers, models are doing, just in the prison space, reporting on this with his energy. And that works, and he's carved that mold.
Anybody can say whatever you want about JD DeLay. He has a following everywhere. Mm-hmm. So regardless of what anybody else thinks, there are millions of people who are fascinated with him and want to hear more.
Yeah, the way his energy, the way he's able to do that, and he's a nice person, that all contributes. That's no different. See, he tapped into a space where those people weren't following some of these, say, a female influencer or a male model or whatever. Yeah. He got a demographic that wouldn't normally follow those people that are interested in this,
And
you're
someone to follow that we're interested in. It's a nice thing when you find that.
And because of the way mine is like more a show, a documentary, I have a very broad landscape. I have teenagers, I have people I have elder people, I have grandparents, I have moms, dads, law enforcement. I am very wide versed because mine is so neutral. I don't share my personal opinions and my thoughts, and I'll never call someone out the way other content creators do, because that's their content, and I respect that. I don't do that because I always want to maintain that environment of a safe space.
Yeah, for sure. So now in closing, you
I'm not gay, Jimmy.
I know that. I know
Are
that.
you, bi? No,
You're not bisexual.
No, I like women.
he said that playing around, but I was actually laughing because there's 3 of us here right now. Hey, you're dishing it.
Hey,
There's gonna be no swinging couch.
Oh, listen, quickest way in the world.
Lucky in.
Shut up.
Jimmy, control your.
Joke about that kind of stuff.
I can't. I can't. There's literally, she's like a prettier version of Beth Dutton.
Oh my gosh.
There's no controlling
I give
Chelsea.
you the prettier part. You didn't sign up. All right, let's let the boss wrap this. Put the ribbon on this. buddy.
Really? Now, your vision for within the next year is to sell Locked In to Spotify. And you're on a good road to do that.
We're building a relationship with them. I think, if I keep, pushing the way I do, video is really everything. And we have high quality video. That's why I'm taking a back seat from travel. Next year, I think the only traveling I'm really going to be doing is, unless it's like a huge interview and I have to go to them, I'm going to encourage people to come to the studio just to keep that quality, or I'll go to LA at Spotify's studio.
Yeah, it's cool that you got a studio.
So I could get those West Coast interviews. But this, by the time I get out here with all the gear and everything, I don't want to do any interviews. It's draining. I'm out of my space. There's too much noises, distractions. Not the same thing. And you're always on a time limit. Like when I was in Austin, you set up 3 interviews in a day. It's like an hour and a half. It's just not, I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. So I'm cutting that.
I don't blame
And just focusing on, in studio. And it's also a cool experience coming to the studio. I have canvases of everyone I've gotten to meet. You get your Polaroid taken. It goes on the wall. It's me. You see it really come to life.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's really neat.
you're on this camera right here, Ian. And what we like to do is let every guest that comes on the show say what you want to say to the incarcerated population, to the underdog, to the guy who's coming home, who can't get a job, who's still struggling, to the guys that are in prison watching the podcast or listening. What do you want to say to them?
I would just say, keep your head up, keep focused, have a vision, have a goal. And when you find out what that is, and it might take some time, to find your purpose, find your goal, find your vision. But when you find that, hold on to it and do whatever it takes legally to accomplish that. And there's so many options to do that. And, you stick with it, you run with it, and you'll realize you'll never want to risk doing anything that could get you back to where you are now, because you're so, on top of chasing that dream and that goal. And that gives you life. You don't need anything else if you have your purpose in that regard.
Man, it's so good. Well, Ian, I want to thank you for coming on the show, man, from Prison to Purpose. See, now I've been on Ian Bick. You've been on Prison to Purpose. Now we just need Chelsea on both of the shows.
What's Chelsea going to come on for?
No, I don't know. She's got some stories, man. She went in and out of institution. The last time she was in jail, it was for whipping a guy.
Oh, with like a crow? Or?
Yeah, it wasn't me, though.
On your show tomorrow.
Thank you for having me. You're interviewing with them?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that's what it was.
Last night, but I ended up co-hosting instead.
Well, thank you for having me, Mr. McGill. I appreciate your friendship. And Chelsea, keep him on a tighter leash.
For sure. So I want to thank everybody for watching, listening, streaming, following. Please go like, share, follow on all platforms.
Like this video? Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss a single content drop in the future, and keep up to date on all future episodes of From Prison to Purpose.